The For me, when I'm preparing a sermon and I know that I have to speak to the congregation, the hardest part for myself is how do you jump into it? How do you lead everyone on this journey with you? Well, my sermon today was going to be about planning and the plans that we make in life and how they come into fruition and how things happen to us. So this morning I come out here to church, go to Sunday school, and my plan was to print off my sermon and my sermon notes at that time. When I got to Sunday school, opened up my computer, it went into this automatic reboot mode. So my computer took the whole Sunday school period and then some to reboot my computer. So I was unable to print off my notes and my sermon, and the kids got a kick out of it in Sunday school class. They thought it was hilarious. So I was like, how appropriate is that my sermon is about planning and about how things happen to us in life and the plans that we make. And then I get here and it's not going according to my plan. So I had to use the Sunday school period to kind of regurgitate what I remembered I wanted to talk about in the verses. And so bear with me, if you will. But what brought this to mind, the planning and how things come to us, my wife and I were watching her senior send-off video the other night. We pulled it out to see, just to bring up some old memories for her, and I'd never seen a senior send-off video before. And in case you don't know, a senior send-off video is they get teachers, and the teachers will say encouraging things to the students, and they'll get students on there and interview them about their future plans, and then they show pictures of various events throughout their lives. And the reoccurring theme was throughout the thing is teachers were encouraging students to chase their dreams or to follow their dreams. Students were talking about what their future plans were. And then some of the students that I saw in the video and some of the teachers, it was just interesting to see what their plans were at that time, and that it didn't work out for what some of the students had desired for their future paths to be. And I just got thinking how often in life we search things and we pursue things and we have these dreams that don't come to fruition. And I asked Danielle when we were watching, it's like, this one teacher kept saying, chase your dreams. It's like, what does that mean? Chase your dreams. It's kind of like a thing that we just say almost anymore. Like, we don't tell students how to chase their dreams, or we don't tell them to set a goal and to make a plan that's according to how you've been raised and what is it that God's instructing you to do. Throughout the Bible, there's numerous statements about your plans and about having wisdom and about desiring wisdom. Just a few of those that I want to share. Proverbs 16:3, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans. May He give you the desire of your heart and make all of your plans succeed. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope in a future. In their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. So it's really hard for us as humans to follow a plan that necessarily goes against what our selfish desires are. Very often we don't want to check in with God and what God has laid out for us. Last week I was having lunch with a friend of mine, and he was telling me a story about how God spoke clearly to him through a moment that he had with his child and his wife. His newborn baby was having a hard time falling asleep and was rocking around back in her bed, and he went back to check on her, and her swaddling was not tightly wrapped around her. And for those of you that have had children or watched children, you swaddle your infant or you swaddle your child because it keeps them warm, it keeps their hands from whapping them in the face or scratching themselves. And he went back there and picked up his baby and brought her back out to the living room. And when he asked his wife, well, why didn't you swaddle our baby? And she's like, well, she doesn't like it. She fusses, and I just think that it's more comfortable. She looks uncomfortable when she's swaddled up like that. And he had a realization that sometimes we don't like the things that God does to us, that God will put us in these boundaries, that God will wrap us up or He'll hold us tight and firm so that we don't hit ourselves, so that we don't scratch ourselves, and that we fight against it and we may not like it. So he wrapped his daughter up and he held her there, and he said she grimaced for about 2 seconds, and then she laid there, and then she peacefully fell asleep, and she went to bed for the evening. And I just thought that was so convenient of a story for where we all are in life, that sometimes we don't necessarily like where God has us. We may want something, we keep pushing and chasing something, and it never happens. And that may be because God has us in this nice little swaddle, and he's holding us in his arms, and we may not realize it, because just like this infant, she doesn't realize what she needs. She doesn't see the future. She doesn't realize that she can hurt herself or scratch herself. But as a parent, that was that parent's responsibility, is to swaddle that child and hold that child. There's a song written by Casting Crowns, and it's called A Slow Fade. And that song kept popping into my head this week. And no one plans, when you set out for life, when you graduate high school, there was an individual in this video who his plans was to go on to Wright State and to pursue a career field much like his father's. However, it didn't work out for him, and he ran into some legal troubles, and his life is not going down the path that he desired. It went against a plan that God may have laid out for him. But no one plans to become an alcoholic. No one wakes up and says, I'm going to graduate high school and I'm going to become an alcoholic. No one plans to get a divorce. No one says, you know what, I will get married to her because I want to go out and get a divorce. No one plans to get fired. No one says, I'm going to go fill out that application because I want to get fired. No one plans to get into a car wreck. And this song, Slow Fade, it kind of speaks to that, is that it's a slow fade. That if you are pursuing these desires, if you're pursuing a life that's not in accordance with God's plan for you, that it's a slow fade, and you may not notice these things happening to you, but your life will slowly fall apart because you're not following a plan that God clearly desires for you. So where is a good place to start? How can you keep checking in? For me, my favorite book in the Bible is the book of James, and not just because of the namesake. But in James chapter 3, wisdom from above, chapter 3, verse 13, who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show by his good behavior, his deeds, and gentleness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and self-ambition in your heart, do not be arrogant and so lie against the truth. This wisdom is not that which comes down from above, but is earthly, natural, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder in every evil thing. But the wisdom from above is pure, then peaceable, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering without hypocrisy, and the seed whose fruit is righteous is sown in peace by those who make peace. So, in summary, if your plans and the life that you're living are creating and keep reinventing selfishness, if it's selfish desires, if it's hurting somebody else, if it's causing conflict in your life, then you should be able to take a step back and realize that these plans aren't in accordance with what God has for you. That this is leading you down a path that is going to end in destruction, that is going to end with you getting fired, becoming an alcoholic, getting divorced, having a drug addiction, having an addiction that can destroy your life, such as an internet addiction, pornography addiction. Again, nobody plans these things. These just happen. And without following and checking back in with God, where God leads us, it's easy to fall into these temptations. So once you have that plan, all right, I need to check in with God. I need to have a life that's in accordance with God's plan. Furthering on in James, it's like, well, where do we start? How do I know how to start this plan? And the plan can easily just be being in the Word every day. You need to be in prayer. We're reading the Bible, a few verses every day throughout the year, so we can get through the Bible in a year. I highly encourage you, if you're not doing that, to be in the Word, because there's not one situation that you're facing that God hasn't specifically addressed in the Bible. If you're dealing with addiction, God tells you, hey, don't do those things. Continuing on in James, in chapter 4. Things to avoid. What is the source of quarrels and conflicts among you? Is it not the source your pleasures that wage war in your members? You lust and do not have, so commit murder. You are envious and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. And then going on to the very end of chapter 4. Come now, who say, today or tomorrow we will go do such and such a city and spend a year there and engage in business and make profit. Yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow. You are just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and also do things, this or that. But as it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. All so often, we say these are the things we're going to do. Like, I want to go do this. I'm going to go to seminary school. I'm going to go get a job at McDonald's. I'm going to go get a job here. I'm going to marry this young lady. But we don't check in with what God has for us. We don't discern through prayer. We don't discern through fellowship with others. So I encourage you to not say, I'm going to do this or that. Try to incorporate, Lord willing. Lord willing, I'll be there tomorrow at 5 p.m. Lord willing, I'll get this job. Lord willing, I'll be able to marry this young lady. Lord willing, I'll be able to date this young man. It just centers you back into the Word. It encourages you to get back into your faith. It encourages you to get back into the Word and lead upon what God has for you. As we get closer to graduation for our seniors, it's my hope for you that you lean upon what you've learned here. It's my hope that you lean upon your family, that you lean upon your pastor, and you talk with those who've been there before. What do you suggest? What are your plans for me? All too often, when we fail, we get embarrassed, and we don't want to share with others that my plans didn't work out. We don't want to ask others for their help on their plans, or what do you recommend for me? Because we get these desires that this is what I think is best for me. And all too often, we fall short because, as I shared, it's God who has plans for us. It's His plans that will allow us to prosper. So if our plans aren't working and we keep falling and stumbling, perhaps it's time to readjust and re-examine our plans. So as we go about our week and as we go about our lives and make our plans, just remember that your plans should be done and set in accordance with God's will. You should live a life, and I encourage you to live a life that praises God and that gives all blessings back to God. We are all an example of it's through His grace and mercy that we are here and able to interact and share our lives with one another. If you're able to encourage or to aid someone in their plans and their lives, I encourage you to do so. I know that I've needed help numerous times throughout this year and throughout my life to set plans and check in with those plans, see if they're in accordance with God's will. So this week, may you be blessed and may you find God's plans line up exactly with yours. It's His name that we pray. One final time we say, amen.